Okay, so we're back. Um, Quick recap. Last week we were talking about um, the entrepreneurial journey and defining that as finding the right business for you, and and that there are three possibilities, three really kind of large groups that we can put all this into, and that is creating your own business from scratch, buying an existing business, or buying a franchise. And so we exploded out those pieces parts fairly well in the last one. But today we're going to talk about what goes into buying a franchise and what should the thought process be for you to buy the right franchise for you. Is that the right frame for it, Chris?
I think so.
Cool. So somebody's decided that they want to buy a franchise. What the heck are their next steps? Or what should they be?
I think there's a point in that process right at the beginning where you have to sort of decide what you're looking for in a franchise. You start this evaluation process for yourself, and this could take weeks or months. I know a few people who have been, looking at franchises for a couple of years. They're not. I mean, they're doing what they're doing, and have sort of a long-term plan, but they know when they're ready to pull the trigger, it's going to be a franchise, and they just want to find the right brand. And there are thousands and thousands of franchise brands of all different types and kinds, everything from automotive to insurance to animal care to restaurants, quick service, and sit down, everything. Um, Fitness, home health care, like the list goes on and on.
So
And
pretty
yep,
much if you can name a business, there's probably a franchise of that business type.
chances are, chances,
Chances are.
yeah.
Yep.
Um, and and within those different brands, there
Mhm.
are a variety of companies that are at various levels of maturation. Some, you're more famous and you're more recognizable brand names, your Massage Envy, your Subway, McDonald's, Firehouse Subs, Chick-fil-A, right? The Dunkin' Donuts, the
Yep.
big ones. Um, and that's typically what people think of when they think of franchise, but that's 1% of 1%. Like
Really?
those are super rare to grow systems to that size and that magnitude. Um, at the other end of the spectrum are your micro emerging and emerging franchise concepts, your franchise brands, and those two terms, micro and emerging, it's more franchise lingo, and um, pretty much sets up to describe like 1 to 10 units is typically like a micro emerging concept. Some people say it's up to 20. There's various interpretations of it, but you get the gist. And then emerging can be 20, 10, 20. Some say 50, all the way up to 100, 200 units. Can be an emerging. So until you get into 200 plus 300 foot, like you're still an emerging franchise concept, and a lot of um, in the opinion of a lot of people within the industry. And then you take those subsections, right? New and experienced and well tenured brands, and you start to now you have to really start getting into some research, and you start to break down how they're put together. Like just like any other company, just because it's big doesn't mean that it's great and where you want to be, right? There's values within that company's trajectory that may not align with your values. um, and that's a big part. I mean, you're talking about anywhere from a 5 to 10 year franchise agreement for most brands. And I would think it's very important to you to consider heartily who you want to be working with, uh, for the next 10 years. And so you've really got to do your research and ask your good questions, and make sure that whether experienced or emerging, established or emerging, uh, that the values line up.
So you're jumping in at the values level. You know me, I always go for the 30,000 foot view. And if I'm not at 30,000 foot, I like to go to 50,000 feet.
Mhm.
One of the first things I would think that a potential business owner, franchisee should do is start with, how do they want to live their life? What do they want to create? How involved are they with the business? And quite frankly, I think it goes to choosing something that you really care deeply about. I'd even go so far as to say that you ought to be doing something that you love, and have that as kind of a first layer of, where do I go looking? You love working with pets, you should work in the pet industry. You absolutely love uh, tinkering on an engine. Well, what size engine? Do you want to go into small engine repair and find something there? Do you want to, buy a Meineke shop?
Right.
You know, but I would think we'd start with, okay, what do I really love doing, and bringing that into the world? Maybe that's just my point of view, but what do you think of that?
Well, it would tend to be my point of view as well, but I do recognize that we as humans might not all have the same, value perspective, right?
Yep.
A huge benefit to, franchise concepts are that you can come into something that it's not an autopilot. There's always hard work to be put in, but you don't, it's a system. You're still stepping into a system. And as
Yes.
long as you're willing to operate that system and follow the protocols, I think there's still an argument to be a successful business owner, even if it's not something that you're absolutely in love, passionate about, right? It's a business opportunity. Now, I think you stand to be even more successful the more passionate you are about it. It's going to
Yep.
drive you to achieve things you wouldn't otherwise. But do I need to be a foodie in order to make a Subway's restaurant successful?
Yep.
And maybe Subway's not a great example because they're huge and they're everywhere. But even a newer concept that's a quick service restaurant.
You're making a good point, a really good point. And actually you're bringing me back to the thought process that I had when I left corporate life.
Mhm.
When I left corporate life, Chris, um, professional coaching was brand new. And so I couldn't have had a passion for coaching because I didn't know anything about it. Quite frankly, my passion was owning my own business, being independent of a corporation, um, doing something that I could really sink my teeth into and enjoy doing, and um, would bring me great profits. And I chose that career of coaching because I liked the profitability. I liked the lifestyle that it was going to give me, and the independence. So you're absolutely right. I was going more onto values than passion at the time.
I think that there's a lot of people out there who know that they can execute a game plan.
Yeah.
And that's what you get in franchising is a game plan and a strategy. And I, I don't think you can get into something that you dislike and make it work just because it's a successful business opportunity. Um, but I think that you can, if you're like the passion, I don't disagree with the passion part of the equation.
Yep.
Like I said, I think it enhances any potential results you would have otherwise,
Yes.
but
But it's not front and center.
it's not front and center because you're
Yeah.
stepping into a franchise not because you're the entrepreneur who needs that passion to create something from scratch, right? The founder has to come with the passion because that's the only at the end of the day, all the skill sets and all of the, whatever business acumen, it's only going to get you so
Yes.
far. When you're building something from scratch, you need that passion is the only thing that's going to carry you through to the other side sometimes, right?
Yep.
But when you're, if you're talking about becoming a franchisee, you need to be able to operate and execute what has already been created, and it lets you off the hook a little bit. I don't know if you have to be completely crazy in love and passionate about the franchise business that you're operating. You just need to follow the protocols and do it well and execute, and you will make money doing it. You should be able to make money doing it if it's a good system and you got good support and all those other things. Now, the one caveat I would say to that is us personally as a franchisor, our Happy Cat franchise, the matchmaking goes both ways, right? The franchisee or candidate should be looking for the right values and the right strategy from their franchisor, but the franchisor is doing that the same way,
Yeah.
right? And we all have different ideas. Franchisors all have different ideas as to what's going to make their ideal franchisee and who they want to work with. And for us, we do. We're early stage. We want people who are passionate, who are
Yes.
coming in and they love animals and they love cats and they have to have, acumen as well. That's important. Um, but for us at this juncture, if they're just kind of mediocre on animal care, yeah, we're probably going to pass.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, so that's going to be the other side that we'll probably explore another time is what is a franchisor looking for in their perfect franchisee. So let's circle back then to that you want to try to find the right franchise because you don't want to start your own business. You don't have one that's for sale that you want to purchase. You want to become a franchisee of a system. How do you go about choosing? How the heck do you walk into those thousands of brands
Mhm.
and say, okay, this is how I'm going to sort through them, weed through them?
Well, thankfully, being 2023, we're in the technological age, and there is this really interesting tool known as Google.
Hmm. Tell me more about that, Chris, because I
Yes.
hadn't heard of it.
And I think that's where for somebody who's come to the conclusion, like, yeah, I think franchising is it for me? That's the best way for me to get into this. And you know what? I would hope if they've decided on franchising, like listen to a couple of podcasts before you even make that decision about franchising, right? Don't just come up with it in your head. There's a lot to know about franchising. There's a lot to know about buying a business, a lot to know about starting a business. So before you even get into, this is probably the last episode, but before you even get into researching potential suitors in franchising, read a franchise book, read listen to a podcast, consume a little bit of information to make sure this is the right fit for you, this franchising model. Once you get there, now you're talking about, well, what kind of a franchise do I want? Is it profit based? Is it time based? Is it peace of mind based? Is it happiness based, passion? Is it all of the above? Start with a Google search. I mean, Google search franchises, types of franchises, auto franchises, daycare franchises, whatever lights you up, put that and then put the name franchise after it, franchises, and you'll get all your results. And just start going to their websites. They all have franchise opportunity websites associated with their brands. If they are doing anything right, you should be able to get a host of information from those websites as to what this looks like within that brand. What do they bring for support? What does it cost? What are the terms? Is it a 5-year, 10-year? Who are the people involved? All of those things. Now, you're not going to make a decision based on that, but you can start a quick list of, oh, this is interesting, and this seems like a nice brand, and that's an interesting concept. And you can kind of get more and more granular with your funnel. So if you start with like, oh, I always wanted to own a restaurant, you're going to get 2,000 results if you type in restaurant franchise, but go ahead and do it. But is there a type of menu that you like, a type of food, or whether it's Italian restaurant franchises? Okay, boom, 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 boom. You're going to get however many Italian restaurants. And as you go through that research, you might come to a place where, and I don't know that this exists, but, a meatball franchise, like the whole franchise is built around different kinds of meatballs. Um, and you could say, man, I love meatballs more than anything. I didn't even think that was a thing. I didn't think you could have a meatball restaurant, right? And now you're starting to align with a concept and everything else. You get to their website, you start doing your research, and they're all going to have contact forms and phone numbers and ways that you can reach out to talk to somebody. And that's get into what you need to be looking for during that conversation. But that's probably your best first place to start is just doing a quick Google search. There are other portals and other ways, and we'll chip away at those during this conversation. That's your jumping off point, I believe, is Google.
Okay. Just as an outsider, that seems really daunting. It's like, oh my God, all of the pages that would come up, and, what's going to come up on the first page of Google? Is that all going to be paid stuff? Or, it seems like that's going to be a real job. But maybe the idea that you're pushing is to just get familiar with the territory.
Mm-hmm.
What is the territory of franchising?
As in actual physical, this is the territory that you're.
No, like how does the whole darn thing work?
Hmm.
Who makes money? How do they make money? I'm wondering, do you have like an intro to franchising book that someone might use? Is there anything you can recommend on that?
yeah, I cannot remember the exact title off the top of my head. Most of our references and tools are franchisor, approaching it from the franchisor perspective.
Yeah.
Um, but a highly recommended resource. I'm gonna get it right here.
Okay.
Faizun Kamal has written a book, and I don't remember the title. We're gonna edit this out anyways.
Yep.
Uh, uh,
Is it called So You Want to Buy a Franchise?
oh, you might be onto something there, Jerry. Um, I think probably one of the most famous books is The Educated Franchisee. It's by Rick Bizio.
Okay.
Um, and the subtitle is the how-to book for choosing a winning franchise.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yep. Another one is The Right Franchise for You. That was written by Faizun Kamal.
Okay.
And again, Google and Amazon can bring you a bunch more titles, but those are probably two of the more well-known ones to kind of start with. Um, the the idea of like, how does this all work? And that's what I mean. Like, you make sure, because it's not what people think. We've learned in our time in franchising. I mean, we call it the F word. People hear franchise and they think something completely, different than what the reality is of what we're trying to do. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, what they think. But, um, you know, uh, I mean, number one, people, my friends, family, networks, like I mentioned franchising, we're franchise. No, that's not the case at all. Uh, and I think people just because franchising is deeply associated with those big brands,
Yeah.
McDonald's, Dunkin', and all of that. And the truth is, the vast majority of franchise businesses have under 100 units and are run by families and are run by small teams that are dedicated to supporting their franchisees, because without the franchisees there is no franchisor. um anyway, so to get that big picture, that territory, yeah, probably those two books and anything else you can get your hands on for how it works
Hmm. I I wonder,
in this podcast.
yes, this podcast is the definitive place. Um, I was just wondering, as someone is driving down the road, I wonder how many stores, businesses they just pass by and have no idea that that's a franchise, and it is a franchise. There,
Yeah.
now that I'm, involved in franchise through my work here at Happy Cat, there are stores that I always went to and I thought they were one-offs or maybe a national brand, but I didn't know that actually it was someone local that owned it and ran it. Um, Wild Birds Unlimited is one of those ones
Yeah.
that I've done business with for years. There's only one store that I know of in
Mhm.
Connecticut, and I thought that was like, huh, somebody came up with this idea and opened a store about birds.
Yeah.
It's phenomenal.
And they've been around for I mean, 30, 40 years they've been franchised. And they have hundreds and hundreds, maybe even over 1,000 units. I mean, they're everywhere. Um, it, a lot of times, franchise concepts, they often start regionally because you can, more
Yep.
easily support. It's changed now with technology. You can support remotely much more efficiently than and sufficiently than used to in the past. So traditionally, franchise concepts they would originate where they were headquartered, where the founders, started the business, and they would grow from there. But there's such a steep curve from emerging franchise concept to, national. And like I said earlier, most brands don't get past that 100 unit mark, that
Mm,
they tend to just kind of stay in their region. So you drive this country, you'll get into the Northeast and you'll see brands here that nobody else has seen anywhere else in the country. And they've been there for 30 years.
huh,
And same thing everywhere. There's a company, it's a restaurant called Beefaroo, and it's a restaurant. They do burgers and stuff like that. Um, and I want to say they originated in maybe, I want to say Illinois, somewhere in kind of like in the Midwest.
okay.
Um, and uh, it, they've been there for years and years. They're like, people are just passionately obsessed with beefaroo in this region, and
Really?
we've never heard of it, but they've been there for years and years, and they're franchising, and they're starting to grow outward now. I don't know, maybe 10 years down the road, beefaroo will everyone will know what a beefaroo is. um but your point is taken. Like, you drive by and you see these restaurants and you think, oh, that's interesting, it's probably a nice independently owned, and it's like, no, they've been doing this for a long time. It's franchise.
Okay. So yeah, that's really interesting to me. If I were just starting out, one of the places I think I would go to is um, someone that advertised themselves as selling franchises, or they advertise themselves as um, knowing all about franchising, and we're going to help you, kind of fit you with a franchise. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so those folks are generally referred to as franchise brokers or franchise accountants, or franchise consultants. Sorry, not accountants. Um, and just like a real estate broker, right? They have a portfolio of brands that they represent. As a real estate broker, may have a portfolio of homes that they're presenting or commercial properties that they're presenting, and it's generally their goal to match you up with the right franchise, and
Mhm.
to do some of the legwork for you, some of that matchmaking legwork. Um, Typically, they'll create a profile for you. What you're looking for, what types of concepts you might be interested in. Um, what your available capital is to invest in the concept, all those types of things. Are you looking to be a absentee owner? Are you looking to be an owner operator? Do you want to be in the business? All of those things, and based on that criteria, they'll turn to their portfolio of franchises, and they will present you some different opportunities, some different looks. Um, Sometimes that works really well for people. Other times, you're somewhat limited by what the broker has in their portfolio. I mean, they don't have all, I think the number's 4 or 5 thousand brands. They don't have all of those brands. They can't just present you everything. They have relationships with some brands, and you know, they'll present those concepts to you if they have it.
So my bet is
Yep.
of the thousands and thousands of brands out there, they're probably limited in their portfolio to I don't know, 100 less.
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. That's a good question. I would guess 100 or less for sure. I mean, and it's just like real estate where some brokers are doing it full time
Yeah.
and 7 days a week, and they're burning and churning. They're working, all of the brands that they represent, trying to find good matches. And some do it part time. They might have a full time job, and the broker thing is kind of a side hustle for them. And so, yeah, I think the ones that are doing it full time probably have more brands in their portfolio. But I mean, despite all of that, we've had current franchisees who are signed to our brand. They came from a broker, not that we had engaged with, not that was not they were not representing our brand, but they just couldn't find a good match with the broker, and so they, dissolved the engagement with the broker after whatever time, and went out and started looking on their own. And we crossed paths one way or another. We met one family through Capcom and another one through Facebook, and so on and so forth. Um, and so it doesn't, it doesn't always work out, but that's what they're there for, is to take you through that process.
So maybe that's another place where a listener would join the podcast. It isn't that it's first view of I want to own a franchise.
Mhm.
It might well be I know that I want to own a franchise. I started working with a broker and I haven't been happy with the choices there.
Mhm.
So now I'm doing my own research.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen it now. Now that being said, that has been our experience, but it's also, we're a new brand in a very, niche market. So there's not a whole lot of brokers who know about us or are representing us, or that we're engaged with. So it sort of makes sense that if somebody's gonna find us, connect with us, it's through other means. So while that's been our experience, broker opportunities in franchising are the number one lead referral source for franchisors across the industry. The
And
majority of those opportunities are typically with the big brands.
yeah,
I mean, there's certainly an expense that goes with using a broker consultant, um, and and the franchisor pays that, not so much, not the necessarily the candidate. Um, but I mean, there's all kinds of statistics on the numbers. If there is 1,000 consultant uh, uh, franchise agreements signed last year. 800 of them were probably with the top 10, franchise brands, kind of thing. That's not an actual statistic. I'm just trying to paint a picture.
yep, yeah. Okay. So our intention today is to talk to someone about how to find the right franchise.
Mhm.
We've got Google it
Mhm.
and start seeing what you find. We've got read a couple of books. That's a good start.
Yeah, brokers.
We do have brokers or consultants
Mhm.
as possibilities to find it. What else should they be doing to find the right franchise?
There is a there is a resource referred to as a franchise portal. So it's essentially a website similar to Google. It's along the same lines, but you can go to one of these websites and it is just a directory of franchises. It's all franchising. One of them, one of the more well-known ones is franchisegator.com. You can go to that website and type in your brand concepts. You can do searches any which way you want to, by size, by investment level, so on and so forth. And it'll bring up all of the brands that are listed
Okay,
in that directory. And that's just the starting point. That's so you can create a list and then, take next steps and make those calls and make those connections. And then, you start talking to people. And then the other for, hey, what's out there? I'm curious what's out there is your franchise shows. So they have franchisor conventions throughout the country at various times throughout the year. And these are big conventions that well, not all, but many franchisors will go to. And they'll set up their booth, and it's very old. It's the old-fashioned way of doing it. But you walk up and down the aisles and you see all the different concepts that are there at that show, and there are representatives from each brand there ready to talk to you about that brand, and they'll have brochures and documentation for you to take back, and real live people to talk to about the opportunity and what they're offering, what they bring. And that tends to be regional. So these shows will kind of bounce region to region, sort of on tour, on a circuit. And when they come to a city near you, you pack up for the day and go down and see what's out there.
interesting. Is there anything else that you want to make sure that we talked about today in terms of finding the right franchise? I feel like this is very, very first steps of how to set out on the journey,
Mhm.
because this is going to be a journey to actually find the right one. What does it take to vet each other out?
Mhm.
And I'm sure we'll be going into that in a lot more detail, but just want, I guess I wanted to say it, that this is just a very, very small first step in how to find the right franchise.
It is, and it's the step for people who know that the franchising model is for them. If you're back another half step back and you're saying, I just want to get out of my corporate life and do something for myself,
Yep.
this isn't the step yet. You still need to assess, do I want to start a business? Do I want to buy a business? Do I want to franchise a business? You've got to do that work. So we're past that, and now we're saying, okay, I know I want franchising. What do I do now? This is where you can start. Get a list of ideas, a list of companies, brands that you think you could get behind, just based on the concept, based on the investment level, based on those very basic criteria. Next episode, I think we're going to talk about, when you do make contact with those brands, what is it that you're looking for?
Yeah.
What do you want to ask them? What do you want to tell them? And your research and your valuation or your evaluation is of that company is going to get very deep, very granular, and you're going to spend a lot of time, as you just said, vetting them out. They're vetting you too.
Yep.
And this is a weeks upon weeks upon weeks process,
Yep.
sometimes months.
Yep. I get it. Is there anything else that you wanted us to go over today, Chris?
No, I think, uh, no, I think we covered some basic stuff, but hopefully gave listeners some things to noodle around in the brain and to maybe take some actions on if
Take
they
some very,
consider.
very first steps. Yep. I like it. Okay, so we'll be back soon with the next episode, and we're gonna help you find that right franchise. We're gonna help you custom fit this. That's our job here. Sound right, Chris?
Sounds absolutely right. Look forward to it.
Okay. See you
Thanks,
later.
Gary. We'll see you next time.